And we are live. Welcome to Totally Unscripted. My name's Martin Hoxie. That's Charles. That's Alice. That's Cara. Welcome to the show. So if you're joining us for the first time, Totally Unscripted is a community developed show. So focusing on Google Workspace. And I'm sure people haven't missed the fact that Google are investing heavily into a couple of areas. One of them, Google Chat. The other one, AI. So in this episode of the show, as the title suggests, we're merging the two into one. And for me, this is a really exciting topic because I've been playing around with. We were talking just before the show, playing around with various versions of Google Chat, Hangouts, and it was always quite painful in terms of extracting data, intent, doing useful things with data for people. And now we've reached a point where we can do so much more. And this is really what this episode's about. It's going beyond basic bots. I don't know, Charles, have you've got anything else to add to that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think, we've seen the evolution of chat apps, aka formerly bots, right? And they're able to do so much more than they did originally when they released. In fact, there's been a lot of development on it. And the type of applications you can build are legitimate applications. There's a lot of great use cases now. And so this episode is a great kind of match of that, where it's going to show some of that evolution, couple in, obviously, the modern AI functionality, then also show you some really interesting solutions which kind of upscale how you can do this. We know we can build great chat apps in AppScript. We also know we can use things like Node.js, which we're going to look at in a second, to really build wonderful solutions. One of the questions a lot of folks have is, well, how do you learn how to build these things? How do you approach it? And we've got some guests today that have actually kind of wrestled some of the complexity out of that by releasing some really great guided tutorials to help you learn how to do that. But before they bring them out, Karen, Alice, I mean, what have you seen in your travels about chat, the evolution of chat, and where are you optimistic to see it go as far as building solutions on the platform?
I mean, as a teacher, I just think that this is a really necessary direction to go. In the education space, we're all been talking about applications such as Conmigo, where they have a chat app in there to tutor students as one person in a room of 20, 30, 40 kids to be able to get around, being able to have some sort of applications to support students getting some of that basic questions and things so that I can focus on creativity, customizing things, something that really requires a human being who knows their kids. There's so much that can be done to help everybody in the room get assistance when there's only one person to assist.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'm very excited for today's talk. Just from seeing how far chat has come, I think it'll be really cool to see the practical ways that you can use the latest way to develop on the chat platform, along with a practical way to use AI beyond just write me a song about flowers.
All right.
Hey, I'm not. I love that as well. I love it all.
I think, not to be funny about this, I think the introduction of AI into Workspace and the ability to bring it in has really kind of given a second life to some chat scenarios, right? Obviously, chat's a great interface, and asking directly to go out and figure out something interesting, but bring it back to where I'm working, I think is super timely, which I think is a great segue for us to bring on our guests. Martin, if you would do the honors.
Here we go. Welcome, Daniel and Gustavo. Welcome to the show.
Absolutely. So, Daniel and Gustavo, first of all, thank you so much for coming on. You are both muted. In a second, we'll let you introduce yourself. But real first, let me take a shot out of it, if you don't mind. Daniel Heinrich. Daniel is actually a tech writer on our Google Workspace platform team, and you've probably read his work without even recognizing who he may be. So coming out of the scenes, thank you for doing that, Daniel. And the architect behind some of these solutions we're about to share with you is actually part of our product team, Gustavo Tondello, or Dr. Tondello, who has his doctorate in computer science, which means that everything he's about to show us is actually done at the nth degree. And by the way, I've looked at his samples. I'm amazed by how clear and concise codist, but he's also a software engineer on the product team. So this is a great combination. I love the fact that you guys are on this mission to help developers become more productive. You actually have a working group internally you're working on to actually showcase developer productivity. So thank you for joining us today. Gentlemen, please add to anything I missed in the introduction. And hello to the community. And you're both muted still.
Go on, Charles, pick on one of them.
Thank you, Charles. I'll jump in. Super happy to be here. No bylines and documentation, but I contribute what I can, working with folks like Gustavo, who can really bring the functionality of our platform to you directly in the form of some of the tutorials we're going to talk about. So thank you.
Yes, thank you for the welcome and the opportunity to be here. Yeah, as Charles mentioned, I've been working on the chat engineering team for a couple of years, and we have really been working to improve the chat platform. So we give app developers the possibility to do more with chat apps and to make it easier. And now we're really involved in this developer productivity team to making your life easier by providing documentation, samples, and thinking how we can improve the platform itself to make it easier. So we're always happy to hear your feedback as well. If you have anything that we could improve to make it better to develop chat apps, it would be great to hear from you. Thank you.
So awesome point, Gustavo, is we have the opportunity to give Daniel and Gustavo some feedback on things they'd love to see. So first of all, we've got a couple solutions we're going to go through, and we're going to go in some depth. But think about other things you'd like to see. Drop them in the comments, or if you have something, just live chat us right here during the live show. We will love to give that feedback to these folks. With that said, either one of you could take this question. You've come together to build some of these solutions. What is kind of your mission and goal with releasing these solutions, and what's kind of the mission of your developer productivity team internally?
Thank you for the question. I'll start. With documentation, we wanted to create some examples that went beyond somewhat simple examples. Prior to our group, we had some chat app samples and documentation that showed developers how to build chat apps that, for example, respond to a text message with a text message. But we wanted to show how capable these apps are. They are fully functional web applications and services. So we thought it would be interesting to develop both tutorials and provide working samples that go beyond the basics. They do things like integrate with artificial intelligence, which we're going to talk about a lot soon, and respond to events from external systems outside of Google Workspace. They can persist data in a Firestore database. So we wanted to show that all of this is possible. We wanted to inspire developers to have their own ideas about how they could use chat apps and the chat platform. And we thought we would also start to use our platform as an external developer to better understand both the friction points people might encounter there and see if we could remove obstacles and make the whole process more accessible. And in doing so, we have produced the samples we're about to talk about.
Maybe it would help, Gustavo, I think you're going to show us a couple of examples. Maybe that will help people just see what we're talking about in terms of what is possible. So I think you're going to start with the Instant Manager example.
Yes, sure.
So while you bring up your screen, Gustavo, first of all, anybody can check out, this is fully documented. Every step is actually narrated for you. If you want to check it out here using the QR code or that long URL at the bottom, you can definitely check it out. And then equally, all the source code is available up here as well too. So again, up on Git, you can actually play with this and see some of this beautiful code that you're about to see. With that,
Mhm.
Take it away.
Yes, thank you. Yes, to me, I think that these examples, we wanted to both give examples of the capabilities we have and the kind of things you can do with chat apps to give you ideas, and also show examples of how you can actually write the code for some of these features. So the code is open, you can also just copy the entire code or parts of it, use as a starting point for your own application, right? So for this first,
Actually, you made a really great point there. These are learning samples, and you
Yeah.
could turn these into fuller samples, but the whole goal behind them is really to become learning examples and not necessarily a functional incident manager that you can put in deployment.
Yes, exactly. They are functional, but they don't have all the features you would expect from this app, because we were focused on teaching you how to do specific things.
Yeah.
Right?
Perfect.
So for this example, the Incident Manager app, we wanted to show how you can use a chat app to start a collaboration space by creating a chat space automatically. And after people collaborate, then we use the chat app again to help summarize what happened. So for this example, we are simulating someone reporting an incident, but this could also come automatically from a third-party monitoring system, for example. But for here, we just use this screen, so it's easier for us to use as a demonstration. And when I fill the information here and I click this button, then we use the chat API to create a space, which was a new feature that we added to the chat platform last year.
And just for people watching, so this is an AppScript web app. So it's very easy for, as part of the tutorial, I guess, you have to think about accessibility for some of these and just being able to create a very simple web app with AppScript and interact with it, create a chat space.
Yes, yeah. I'll show the code in a minute.
Yeah.
But yeah, just to show what the app does, then you see this space was created automatically by the app just by calling the API. I still see the previous tab on the screen.
Yeah, you may have to share the whole window out since you're spawning up to chat. We'll wait a second there. And so one of the things I think that while you're pulling that up, one thing I was super impressed with when I saw this example is you put everything in one project to make it super easy. So you have a web app, you have a chat app, you have an AI call, everything in the kitchen sink in there, which I thought was pretty awesome. But now we're in chat.
Yes, okay, now I'm sharing the whole window so I can demonstrate. So this space was created automatically by the app, and it's a regular chat space. And then the person that I requested to be added when I filled up that form was added automatically also by the app to this space. And then users here could collaborate normally. And then I'll go to my other window here and just simulate that the other person responded. And then we added a command here. So you will see this as the slash commands in the documentation that you can use to interact with the chat app. And in this case, what this command does is it will generate a summary of the conversation in the space. And we are using the Vertex AI API to do that.
So it's really quick.
Yeah.
That's one of the things. It's really a responsive app. So there we have, it's a really responsive app in terms of what you're doing there when you're interacting with that in terms of.
Yes. Thank you for the comment. Yeah. So you can see here this summary of the conversation. What we did is we basically copied the full chat history from the space using the API, and we sent this with to Vertex AI with a prompt saying, "Please summarize this chat conversation," and then Vertex AI generates this summary here. And if I quickly show how we built this, and by the way, we have a tutorial there on our documentation that was linked before with the step-by-step instructions on how to deploy this yourself so you can try it. And you have a link there where you can download this AppScript code directly. So just to give a quick idea of how these things work, for example, to create a chat space, just send a request to the chat API using the setup space method. Then we add the app to the space using the create member API method. And then we post a message. The app posts a message to the space by calling the create message method. You can see that it's really easy to call these API methods here from AppScript application.
Yeah, I also want to call out how clean this
Yeah.
looks now with the chat advanced service that was recently added. It looks like it's making it a lot easier to do this in AppScript.
Yeah, if you remember back when the API first released, you saw a lot of folks using URL fetch. URL fetch, as you know, is a bit wordy when it comes to this, and also you have to maintain it and get it right. This is beautiful because chat.spaces.messages.do something like list makes it so neat. So super.
Yeah, it's the new service that was added last year, and this has autocomplete as well, so you can see the list of methods that are available here and the parameters. It's really interesting to work with this service.
And what I love about this sample, it's pure AppScript, but it shows yet how powerful and how productive you can be doing, dare I say, just AppScript. I mean, you're hitting all these different capabilities without actually venturing out the bounds of AppScript, which we'll contrast in a second when we show the other demo, but this is super neat and super concise.
This example was actually the example I learned how to efficiently call Vertex AI using AppScript. So Gustavo, I don't know if you just want to quickly show the AppScript JSON file where the manifest is defined. So
yes,
if you look at the OAuth scopes down at the bottom there, so there's a scope there for cloud platform. So that essentially makes it so much easier in terms of, you mentioned, Gustavo, this is a tutorial, it's a demo, it's not designed as a production tool. Someone could take it to production, but I think that line makes it so easy in terms of interacting with the Vertex AI API, and you've kindly even put it in a separate script file within the project, so you can see how you're using the prompt and the message is in the chat space to send that into Vertex AI and get a response. Yeah, there we go. So that was a snippet of code that I directly lifted and started playing around with other Google Workspace services and data to look at how you can do that.
Actually, same. Yeah, this was the first time I connected to Vertex.
Yeah, that's wonderful, because as I said, that's the goal, right? That we demo these things, and you can use this code as a whole or just copy some pieces of it to complete specific tasks in your application, even if what your application does is not going to be exactly what this one does, but you just can copy pieces of it.
And the tutorial, it goes through in terms of the Google Cloud's project setup as well. So obviously you're going to need a cloud project associated with this just to enable various APIs and get firing off as it does.
Yes, exactly.
I'm interested, Alice, and do you ever, I know you're like a massive add-ons developer, Alice, so you've become very accustomed to the Google Cloud Console, but in your experience, do you find, is that something that other people have easy access to, or
I mean, I'll access it. It's just going into the Google Cloud, but there's so many elements to that I really feel as who's not a developer for a living, that having someone kind of help you and guide you through, like, these are the things you care about, because there is millions of things that have nothing to do with publishing your add-on. It's part of Google Cloud.
I'd imagine, as well as a technical writer, it's a lot of steps to explain to people. But I know there's some nice integrations into Google Cloud in terms of buttons that you can press just to switch stuff on.
Yes, I think you've anticipated part of the reason for a rhyme there. The Google Cloud Console is expansive. It does a lot. You might just want to pick from the garden just the functionality that you want to use. Vertex AI is a great example. We saw how simple it is to add Vertex AI to the manifest. We saw how simple it is to call Vertex AI API from AppScript. There is another prerequisite to doing that, which is enabling Vertex AI in Google Cloud Console. And sometimes, depending on the technology that you're using, and we'll see this in greater detail when we set up a Firestore database for the project management app, there are times that you need to configure other technology in Google Cloud Console that you might want to use for your app. AI applications can require agent configuration or model data that sometimes is configured in Google Cloud Console. For these tutorials, though, there's no need to worry. We guide you step by step through the Google Cloud Console. You can work directly in the Google Cloud Console web interface. We have buttons that take you directly where you need to go. We even have buttons that will enable APIs in batch, so that you don't have to enable 11 APIs. We make the process as simple as possible. It's also possible to work from a CLI and configure your Google Cloud project if that is your preference. And we provide instructions for both.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what we've seen, a lot of folks come to AppScript because of its simplicity or perceived simplicity and its accessibility. To make that leap into doing full-blown, full-stack, cloud-based work, maybe a little foreign or even unnerving for folks. And I think your sample, and this is a perfect segue. I'd love to, Gustavo, if we can prep the second one now and show the second one. This makes it approachable and seem easy, but let's be honest, there obviously is some cliff. I'd love to know, and maybe we can talk after we see this demo, but I'd love to know kind of your best practices, besides obviously walking through these labs, on how to get folks thinking about how to make that transformation from just doing AppScript to doing something a little more robust and scalable, whether it's cloud functions or beyond or whatever. I'd love to see how that actually transpires for folks. But that said, why don't we take a look at the second one so we can kind of see the difference between the two.
I was going to say what I've been doing, because I feel like that's the space I'm in right now, is Google Gemini has been on the money. Like, I put stuff in there, like, here's what I have, here's what I want to do. These are things I know how to do, and I don't have any technical ability in these particular things. Make me a tutorial like I'm an idiot. And it does. And I read through it and I get what this is saying. And I feel like it feels doable, where before it just felt so jargony that I thought this is not something for me, but it is.
Yeah, it's risky.
For real. My goodness.
That's why we're trying to document all these different ways of creating apps, because there are a few different ways, but they're not infinite. So our goal is that even if the app you're building is not exactly the one we're showing, but the steps to configure and deploy the app should be similar to one of them. So either if you're doing AppScript, or if you're doing Cloud Functions, or if you're doing your own server, we're going to have some examples for that. So you can change what your app does, but you can go to one of the tutorials and follow the steps, how to configure your app, and then in the end, you just change the functionality in the code. And I feel that the transition from AppScript into Cloud Functions is not a large step, because you can also, if you look at the example here, already moving to the next sample that we have, the steps to deploy the cloud function here, once you have them, is just a matter of, sure, you have to go to the Google Cloud Console instead of the app script, but once you get there, is basically you create the function and you upload your code. Or if you follow our command line interface, you just copy this and paste into your terminal and execute the commands, and it will do all the heavy work for you. So if you follow the guidelines here, you have this deployed to a cloud function with almost the same easiness that you would do it in AppScript.
Yeah, as someone who generally only uses AppScript in my day-to-day, I tried out this tutorial, and what I found really helpful was just the step-by-step approach. I used the Cloud Console UI, and I really appreciated how specific the tutorial is on like what I need to pay attention to in Google Cloud. Because Alice, to your point, there's so much there that it's so good to have guardrails and to know what field I'm looking for and know that I can ignore the rest of the fields, because if it's not listed in the steps, I don't have to worry about it. And so this gave me the confidence to step out of AppScript for a moment and look at what else I could do.
Okay, very good. To show what we wanted to showcase in this application, we wanted to show more of what we can do in terms of kind of a full-fledged enterprise application inside Google Chat. And for this case, for example, we built a small project management application that you can use with your team inside a chat space. So you can, for example, create user stories, which is an agile project management technique. And we even added integration with Vertex AI here, so you can only specify the name of your user story. And Vertex AI will generate the first description for you that you can then only edit. So here, this is the title I created, test a new application, and the description here was automatically generated by Vertex. And yeah, and we wanted to show that you can have full dialogues here where users can edit things. You can also use AI here in this case, for example, to expand a short description or to correct the grammar if you wrote it yourself. You can change the status here, set a priority. So anything that you can do in an enterprise application that has a simple user interface, you can do here right inside Chat. For example, open a dialog with a list of the user stories. And one interesting aspect here is that this is all inside this collaboration space, right? So you can see that the changes I'm making here are being posted by the app back into the space. So the other members of the space are immediately seeing that I created a new user story here. And if they want to interact with the user story, they can just come here and press these buttons. For example, if someone wants to assign the story to them, right here, so we are streamlining these. You don't depend on receiving a notification by email, then clicking a link, open another window to interact with the application. Everything is here inside the same chat space.
I wonder, Gustavo, so you've mentioned there in terms of the integration with Vertex AI, converting titles into descriptions and also expanding on those descriptions. Are you able to show that particular snippet? The
Yes.
bit I'm particularly interested in is, I think we're all slowly or quickly becoming prompt engineers, and you know, you could spend a lot of time engineering prompts for this. In the tutorial, I noticed that they were quite short in terms of the built-in prompts you got. Is that a purposeful decision on your, designing this as a tutorial, not to go overwhelm people with really long prompts. You're more interested in the basic functionality.
Yes, exactly. It is, as we mentioned before, is a learning example. So we wanted to keep it simple, but to be honest, I was surprised by even how these simple prompts worked very well. I'm sure if I spent time trying a few different prompts, I could improve them and get better results. But honestly, I just wrote the first prompts that came to my mind, these very short examples, and they worked so well that I didn't feel the need to change them, at least for this example.
You made a great statement in one of the meetings I was in with you talking about some of this work, and you were clear to point out that these are not AI solutions. These are solutions that use AI. It's just another feature. It's just another kind of API tool in the bag, so to speak. You want to elaborate on that a little bit? I thought that was a really interesting point that you were making.
Yes, because you can use AI two different ways, I think, right? Like AI can be the main tool, like when you interact with the Gemini app and ask things directly to it. But it's also very interesting to add AI to complete specific tasks in your application. That's what we wanted to show here. So this app uses a lot of the chat platform capabilities to interact with the users using dialogs, messages, and those are not powered by AI, but we used Vertex AI API to do that specific part, complete those specific tasks of expanding the user stories, correcting grammar. So integrating AI into our application to do specific tasks like this, it's very, very easy. And it really saves users a lot of time, because I think what I see a lot of people reporting that they're doing nowadays is like they do this manually, right? Like they would copy their user story title, they would write this prompt, generate a description for me, then copy and paste all of these in the Gemini app, get the response, then copy the response back from Gemini into their application to save it, right? And so we're integrating all of this here into a click of a button, so making the life of this user much easier and faster.
The other aspect I liked about this example was because you've got Firestore, you're using all the data that as part of the chat space. You know, as a UI, we see messages and who sent those messages, but the data underlying that is like you've got information about the chat space, so you're recording which space messages are being sent into. And for me, this was a great in terms of if someone came to me and said, we want to develop something that's going to work across multiple chat spaces, this would be my go-to, right? I'm going to start here. I'm going to look at how you've structured this and just build on it. So I think that's one of the things, you know, a lot of the chat examples I've seen start quite, you know, they're very small. They're a single space, whereas this is thinking about if you were to scale this is kind of a great starting point for you. And I think you know, with wider availability of chat apps in a marketplace, if I was switching from Workspace add-on development to chat app development, this would be my starting point. Hint, hint, wink, wink.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting. Yeah, we wanted to show that it's possible to create full applications where you have a database behind it and use chat as the interface for the application, right? And creating this user interface that uses the card framework to generate those dialogues was much faster than if I had to create my own web application and pick a web framework and everything, right? And the interesting thing is that I see that more and more people like to interact through chat interactions with others, right? So there's been a shift of people preferring to move from the browser or from desktop applications to living inside chat.
I think you're right. I think you're right. You made the point earlier that the use case is I'm comfortable or familiar or have an expectation when I'm in chat, I should be able to ask my colleague something, or I should be able to ask AI something. So that whole notion of creating a prompt in chat and pushing it out from there just makes sense, and it just feels like a natural workflow. I don't see myself, no disrespect to add-ons, I don't see myself going over to the panel and doing that, or I don't see going up to the menu and doing it. But for chat, it feels just like a natural workflow. So I think it's kind of unlocked, I think, some of the secret sauce that chat apps are kind of missing a little bit, as far as just having that natural flowing conversation into it as well too. I do have a question I want to ask, and I know it's a tough, weird kind of question, but you probably get asked this one a lot. You showed a great example in AppScript, and we know and love AppScript. Then you show obviously an example that has different functionality and some different capabilities. How do you help somebody know when to say when for which use case, which background? Where would you tell somebody? Real simple. You got two solutions here. Which one should they look at first, and why? Anybody can take that.
Yeah. Well, just want to mention that we have also been recently expanding our documentation here exactly about how to choose a chat app architecture. So we have like the strengths here of each one of the approaches. And it really depends on what you're planning to make. Some of the solutions might make it a bit easier than others. Most of the things that you would like to build can be built using any of the approaches. Like, I mean, something that you could build in AppScript, you could probably build using Cloud Functions or your own web server as well. There's no limitation. But for example, if you're interacting with other Workspace products, like on the Incident Manager example, we interacted with Google Docs to generate a document, then doing that in AppScript might be a bit easier because it's easier to call all the Workspace APIs from AppScript. But it's also possible using other languages, not a problem, right? And for the incident management, it seemed easier for us to use Cloud Functions because there's already integration of Cloud Functions with the Cloud Firestore database. So it seemed like a natural choice, but it would also be completely possible to write the same application from AppScript and call the Firebase database from your script. So there's no limitation there as well.
I love this table. It's very helpful.
Same thing. I was going to take a screenshot, then I'm like, wait a minute, I can get to this easily.
I'll just throw it up here one more time. If you didn't catch it, there is the URL for that. We didn't have that pre-prepped, but thanks for getting that in there. That's super awesome.
That was a great work from our tech writing team.
As you're developing documentation, are you spending a lot of time looking at other chat apps and just seeing what they're doing? In terms of your creative process, what is it a mixture of kind of inspiration that you're taking, or is there a list of we must hit Firestore, we must hit Cloud Functions, or how do you approach this?
That's a great question. I think the answer is that it's a little of both. There's some really exciting apps out there that can definitely inspire us to want to help people learn how to do things like develop a chat app that stores data, updates data, gets data, deletes data in a Firestore database. We have a very capable platform, and the platform has gotten a lot more capable in the last 2 or 3 years. Or samples for chat apps in documentation have opportunity to showcase exactly what the platform is capable of. So we talked about the 2 tutorials and samples we've made, and there was a layer of, it's possible to use Vertex AI with chat apps. Let's demo how to do that. It's possible to store data in Firestore. Let's demo how to do that. And if you were taking a close look at the chat app architecture table there, you might have noticed integrations with features with names like PubSub. It would be good, I think, for the development community. It would be good for our documentation to have a tutorial, a sample that shows how you can use this service. again, in an inspirational sense and in an implementation sense. So earlier, some folks said that they effectively learned how to efficiently call the Vertex AI from our incident response app. That's music to our ears. That is the reason we are developing these tutorials and samples. There are a lot of things chat apps can do. The sky really is the limit. So I think that in the coming months, we're going to see more tutorials that show that these chat apps are in fact fully functional web applications and services that surface work, surface data, surface the ability to do things. Again, whether that's in a classroom setting, whether that's in a sales team setting, whether that's in a DevOps setting, directly in Google Chat, because Google Chat is where people are collaborating with one another, especially with remote work and so on and so on. So we want to show all of that in our documentation.
Absolutely. And I think, it's got to be hard given the speed that chat is working at. It's got to be hard to keep up with all the new things coming out. And so my question is around, these new samples, they've only been around for a couple months now, but even in that time, chat has released new features, new functionality. As you think back to the samples you built, is there anything that you might have done differently with the new stuff that's recently come out with chat?
Great question. And one of the exciting things about chat app development is that you're always getting new features and functionality. Great example to answer your question. When we built the incident response demo, we knew we wanted to demo the capability of Chat API. That app creates messages, it lists messages in a space and passes them to Vertex AI. It updates messages. It does a lot using the Chat API. It creates memberships. It creates a whole space. When we built the app, we called Chat API using an HTTP response. We used the fetch URL in AppScript. Shortly after we published the app, the chat app platform team released the Chat Advanced service in AppScript, which, as we saw, is so great for calling Chat API. And we were so happy with that we actually updated the published sample and documentation to use the Chat Advanced service. One of the things that we intend to demo with these tutorials is best practices, and using Chat Advanced service is a best practice. That is one example to answer your question.
Just in terms, you mentioned looking for feedback on these as well. So do you have a preferred way, or any way is a good way in terms of feedback? I know Google's very good at collecting feedback through the documentation page. You obviously published as well to GitHub. Is there, if we're giving a tip to our viewers, is there somewhere that you look more closely in terms of feedback?
Thank you for that great question. I love receiving feedback through the feedback widget on the documentation page, in part because it ties the feedback to the document. Right. When you provide feedback, it actually creates a little bug for our documentation team to triage and update. You can submit ideas. It doesn't just need to be this documentation doesn't work, which hopefully it always works, but we are humans. Other places include interacting with Charles and Kara directly through whatever connection you may have. There's a GDE communities and groups. There's conferences, which are great places to interact with us directly. This very show, when we are guests on the show, could be a great opportunity to provide feedback directly to especially the dream team over here. Those are some of the ways to best provide feedback. And I think we as the doc team in 2024 are trying to emerge from the shadows and engage with the community a little more directly to make the documentation useful first and foremost, relevant first and foremost. You can have two things that are first and foremost. to the developer community. And, a big part of our process here was we thought, well, let's just become the development community. As Gustavo noted, some of the reason is to develop platform features and to remove obstacles that folks might have while developing. So we talked a little bit about the Google Cloud console and how expansive it is, and we too find it expansive, frankly. And I'll say here briefly, you might find yourself implementing something like the project management app, and you might find yourself getting errors from Google Cloud Console, and that's okay. We too sometimes get errors from the Google Cloud Console, and we are. An example where you could engage with us is if you get an error and the documentation is not helping you get by, go ahead and hit that feedback button, paste the error in there, talk a little bit about what was going on, and darn it if we're not going to try to update that documentation so that no one else ever gets that error ever again.
Totally. And take comfort that an error is like a rite of passage.
Yes.
Everyone's got to do it.
It's something to be proud of.
Are you really pushing the envelope if you don't get them?
If you don't get them, you can hit that feedback button and let us know that you didn't get any errors, and we're happy to hear that too.
Absolutely.
My tip on the instant response app: don't do it in a dev environment and then loop in your line manager to the instance space and then say there's a car crash. That really freaks them out. That was my discovery anyway. But I guess that's the good call to action to finish the show on, is if you're out there and you're struggling to learn something about Google Workspace development and you'd like to see a tutorial or a code examples on that, reach any one of us, any means that you can. We are listening, and Charles put up the link as well to the TU website feedback forum. Let us know. We'll champion your cause for you and hopefully make your life a bit easier along the way. On that note, is there anything else we want to add, team?
I would just like to say, first of all, not just thank you to Daniel and Gustavo for coming on the show. Super appreciate that. I absolutely love this mission that you're on. In samples past, they were short and to the function and didn't really help you see the big picture. And these samples are much more complete, much more realistic, much more of a end-to-end learning solution. So thank you for undertaking this. Thank you for sharing with us, and thank you for stopping by today.
Yeah, thanks so much, you guys. This was great.
Thank you for talking.
Thank you. We'll see you. We will see you next time. Happy scripting in the meantime, and we look forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks.